Have you ever walked into a shop with your children and felt like even before you've walked into the door, people have made their mind up about you? Now, we're going to talk about today how people are stereotyping people based on just looks and ethnicity. Doesn't matter how much education you've got, you'll be judged on, just based on color and your ethnic group. And we're going to talk about how a small minority of people can have a huge impact on the rest of one ethnic group or many ethnic groups. So join me on this episode and let's analyze what's going on at the moment in the Western world. Hello, welcome back to the Room of Opinions podcast here. Today is an important episode. Now, I don't usually go into politics, but I think it's important that there are a lot of things that are happening these days which I think people need to take a stand up for and speak about it. Now, full disclosure, I'm not against any ethnic group. All human beings should be treated equally, of course, but there are certain things that another ethnic group won't understand unless someone actually comes out and speaks about this. Now, the video we're going to be looking at today is a guy which I really am fond of. Shan, his name is, or Shan Prasher, I think his name is. His channel is great. I watch a lot of his content, about roasting movies and stuff. But he also does these podcasts called Honestly Saying Podcast, and they can be about movies or anything. Basically, he will speak about, and sometimes they can be a bit political. But I think this video that's just come out, which was yesterday, has hit a real good point on, racism in the Western world. And I mean, I'll be honest, there some people will understand it, because they'll have the civil sense, the logical mindset, to think it through. And then there's some people who will leave comments, go back to your country, this type of stuff, which is just basically just saying stuff, not really thinking things through. And then before you say something. So I think it's important that I wanted to bring this topic up, but I'm gonna play some bits of this video. Hopefully, we don't get any copy strike. And if anything, Shan, if you do want to reach out, about me using your content or anything, please reach out, and let me know if there's any issues. But I'm just basically going to be reacting to the video. They are going to be speaking in some English and some Hindi, but I understand what they said, and it really did get me emotional about this, as in about wanting to make this video today. And there's a lot of things I just keep quiet about, I'll be honest, and I won't mention it, but we need to discuss this now. This is the Room of Opinions podcast, so we can share opinions in this podcast, which is why I designed it. So why not, utilize this podcast to discuss these matters? As I mentioned, I'm not going to be targeting anyone, but this will be giving clarification to a lot of people who don't understand what it's like to be of a different ethnic background, and how it can make us feel, just, on a small, really detailed level, um, where you don't even have to say anything, but it impacts us mentally. Um, and basically, we've got families as well, which is the biggest concern that you can have once you're a father. And that's one of the concerns I have at the moment with what's going on in the UK and the US and a lot of the European countries. But these guys hit their target, or let's say hit the bullseye with why these things are happening and what's going on. So, and I'll try and translate this as best as possible, so the audience I've got can understand. But bear with me, please. This is going to be a long video, um, because we're going to watch this and see what they're saying. I'll speed it up a bit before we go ahead. Playback speed.
The hate against Indians, racism, clear hate. Stereotyping में नहीं हो रही, वो बस कि भाव हरामजादे हो गए यहाँ से.
उनके कल्चर में नदियों को साफ रखा जाता है, वो ट्रॉफी का रैपर तक नहीं फेंकते. तुम नंगे होके उसमें घुस रहे हो, उसमें फूल विसर्जित कर रहे हो, पानी दूध डाल रहे हो, उसमें मूर्तियां बहा रहे हो, तो वो तुम्हारे को गाली नहीं बकेंगे तो क्या करें?
So this is just the opening, but what they're talking about is how there is racism, but from our own culture. And I'm not an Indian, I'm British Pakistani, but the cultures are not that different, right? With what the bad habits are in some of our cultures, and they should be left behind when they do come over to any of the Western countries. But unfortunately, I'll discuss further on why that's an issue from there and why it's an issue over here from how they've come here.
तुम वो देश हो जो कहते हो कि गंगा हमारी माँ है, नदी हमारी माँ है, यहाँ हम छठ पूजा. क्या कर रहे हो तुम गंगा के साथ भाई? पूरा अपना पूजक सामग्री कर लेंगे और सामग्री जिस पॉलिथीन में आई थी वो पॉलिथीन भी फेंक देंगे. तो तुमने पूजा क्या की? तुमने ढोंग किया.
All good points, and I'll explain them as the video goes on.
बॉब्स बैजने और वो जो हंसी. हमारे यहाँ का एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर आके कहता है कि हमको महाकाल स्टैंडर्ड टाइम करना चाहिए. हमारे यहाँ के मंत्री कैबिनेट में बैठे हो कहते हैं डार्विन की
Because
थ्योरी
I think this is just the opening here.
हमारे यहाँ के मंत्री
Just to,
पार्लियामेंट में कहते
you
हैं कि
know,
यार एस्ट्रोलॉजी के सामने तो विज्ञान बौना है. यही बात इसी टोन में कही गई है यार. इंडियन चाइनीज पीपल आर वेरी सिमिलर. एक डिफरेंस जो रहा है हाउएवर, इस चाइना ने समझा कि रिलीजन इज द ओपियम ऑफ द मासेस, उन्होंने धर्म हटाया. और हमारे यहाँ अनपढ़ लोगों ने कहा धर्म ही है जो हमारे पास है, आप कुछ नहीं है.
And we gotta do it something like this.
Welcome, Saket bhai. Thank you so much for doing this again. पहले let me just apologize before we start. Last time we recorded and it was a fantastic conversation. That was about 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
कल time हो गया, right? It was a fantastic conversation, but somehow the footage got cut from my end. My big apologies. And I was like, यार मैं सार्थक को फोन करूंगा, वो मुझे बोलेगा कि यार तूने पहले रिलीज नहीं किया, but you were sweet enough to actually forgive and forget and move on. And now we are sitting over here. Thank you bhai, thank you for taking out the time. And last time हमने एक बारे में बात करी थी, and it was about racism. जैसे मैं बाहर रहता हूं, आपको बताया. And now you've traveled abroad as well.
इनफैक्ट मतलब अच्छी बात है. थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग मी शान भाई ऑन योर पॉडकास्ट. मेरे ख्याल से तो अच्छा ही हुआ कि मतलब वी आर गेटिंग टू सिट अगेन एंड टॉक अबाउट द सेम टॉपिक्स अगेन, क्योंकि आप थोड़ा कॉन्वर्सेशन मैं बेहतर तरीके से कर सकता हूं. क्योंकि लास्ट टाइम और अब में डिफरेंस ये है कि मैं बीच में 1-2 बार विदेश हुआ हूं, तो जिन चीज़ों पे हमने बात की थी रेसिज्म के बारे में, इंडियंस अब्रॉड, मतलब उसका एक फर्स्ट हैंड एक्सपीरियंस है मेरे पास. अब मैंने वो चीज़ जिन पे मैंने बात की थी, मुझे लगा था ये चल रहा है, वो फिर मैंने फेस भी किया, फील भी किया. तो अब थोड़ा सा ना एक पर्सपेक्टिव है, तो अच्छा कॉन्वर्सेशन हो सकता है मेरे ख्याल से. सो नाइस यार, इट्स ऑलवेज फन टॉकिंग टू यू, नेवर फील्स लाइक इट्स अ पॉडकास्ट और समथिंग. वैसे हम तो कभी फोन पे बात करते हैं तो लंबा चली जाता है. तो नाइस, थैंक यू फॉर इनवाइटिंग मी ऑन पॉडकास्ट.
तो भाई let's just get into it. कैसा आपका experience? What was it? Detail it. बताओ.
इट वाज गुड. फर्स्ट जो
पहले बताओ.
पहला तो मैं गया था यूरोप. सो इट वाज चेक रिपब्लिक, जर्मनी एंड ऑस्ट्रिया. जर्मन एम्बेसी का एक प्रोग्राम होता है जिसमें दे इनवाइट जर्नलिस्ट फ्रॉम ऑल अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड और वो अपने मतलब प्रोग्राम्स पे बात करते हैं. सो दिस टाइम इट वाज डिसइंफॉर्मेशन बाय रशिया. उनकी मीडिया का यूरोप और रशिया का चलता रहता है ना, तो उसको लेके वो बुलाते हैं फेक न्यूज़, डीफेक्स, मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन पे कॉन्फ्रेंसेस होती हैं. आप अलग अलग कॉलेजेस में जाते हैं, प्रोफेसर से बात कराते हैं. तो एक वो था. बेस्ट एक्सपीरियंस वाज कि आई गॉट टू नॉट ओनली आई गॉट टू गो अब्रॉड एंड आई गॉट टू मीट पीपल फ्रॉम 16 डिफरेंट कंट्रीज. तो 16 डिफरेंट कंट्रीज और कल्चर्स का कॉन्टेक्स्ट. और उसके बाद रिसेंटली मैं भी थाईलैंड गया था. थाईलैंड तो मैं स्पेसिफिकली ये डॉक्यूमेंट्री बनाने गया था कि इंडियंस एंड सिविक सेंस का क्या है, वहाँ पे क्या मसला है. तो वहाँ जाके वहाँ के डायस्पोरा से बात की, वहाँ जाके एक मतलब जो इंडियंस है एक फैमिली रह रही है उनसे बात की, वहाँ के कुछ लोकल लोगों से बात की जो पहले से थाईलैंड में रह रहे हैं. ये कैसे बदला ये सब, तो वो सारा कॉन्टेक्स्ट मिला. तो अभी तो ये रहा है.
तो let's take it step by step. पहले चलते हैं यूरोप. You want to start with Europe or do you want to talk about what you faced in Thailand shooting program? यूरोप में बताओ कैसा रहा आपका?
बहुत अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस रहा भाई. मतलब इट वाज डिफरेंट कि मेरे लिए तो देखो पहली कंट्री आप बाहर जाते हो तो बहुत डिफरेंट एक्सपीरियंस रहता है मेरे ख्याल से. मतलब चाहे आप कहीं भी जाओ, चाहे आप श्रीलंका जाओ, यूरोप जाओ, अमेरिका जाओ, पहली बार जब आप बाहर जाओगे और डिफरेंस बस इतना आता है कि मतलब क्योंकि यहाँ तो मुझे पता है मैं अपनी ब्राउन लोग के बीच में हूँ, इंडियंस के में हूँ. जब आप बाहर जाते हो तो सडनली यू बिकम इंडियन एंड यू.
Yeah, that's one of the things, you know, when I've went abroad, of course, because it's all the same, shall I say, same colored people, you're not going to feel like that you're standing out, but you can't be, it looks that way, where I live at the moment, when you go shopping sometimes in some places, you're kind of standing out, even though you're not wanting to stand out, you're just a human being. I can't really, let's say, be honest, change my color now. It's just how I was born. It's not like, I think people forget to understand, right? When you're born, it's you didn't come into this life by choice. The second thing is that then you've not also, you know, decided that, you know, you're going to be of this race or this color. And I don't know. It's like these type of things that I don't understand. They should be more talked about. I'll be honest. They should be more talked about, but they aren't.
सर्च फॉर योर आइडेंटिटी कि भाई वहाँ तो मैं सार्थक हूँ, वहाँ तो मैं यूपी का हूँ, दिल्ली का हूँ, स्टूडेंट हूँ, क्या हूँ. अब आप जाके आप इंडियन और लोग आपको कैसे देख रहे हैं, कैसे परसीव कर रहे हैं, तो वो एक चीज होती है, वो एक फेज होता है जब आपको निकलना होता है ना. जब आपकी आइडेंटिटी आपकी रेस होती है, तो जब आप पहली बार फेस करते हो, उससे गुजरते हो, तो दैट इज अ गुड एक्सपीरियंस टू हैव. सो दैट इज समथिंग व्हिच वाज हाईलाइटेड इन जर्मनी ऑब्वियसली. एंड फिर उसके बाद मेरा चेक भी जाना हुआ, वियना में जाके यूरोप का कल्चर कैसा होता है, अलग लोग, डेवलपमेंट, पॉल्यूशन, बहुत सारी चीजें सीखने को मिली. उसके बाद थोड़ा सा जर्नलिज्म का भी था. एंड फिर थाईलैंड वाज अगेन अ डिफरेंट एक्सपीरियंस कि वहाँ पे यूरोप नहीं है, वहाँ पे थाई कल्चर, इंडियन कल्चर बहुत सिमिलर है. मतलब थाईलैंड जाके तो मुझे लगा यार ये चीज इंडिया में क्यों नहीं हो सकती. यूरोप में तो फिर भी अलग रहता है ना कि डेवलप्ड कंट्री है ना, उनके जीडीपी अलग है, उनके सर्कमस्टेंसेस अलग हैं. थाईलैंड में तो मैं देख के कह रहा हूँ कि यार सेम चीज ये मतलब कुछ जगह ऐसी देखी मैंने कहा ये हैदराबाद हो सकता है. जब आप थाईलैंड के लोग only difference is कि भाई कोई हॉर्न नहीं बजा रहा, कोई ओवरटेक नहीं कर रहा. तो वो ज्यादा कहते हैं in terms of culture that was more relatable and more shocking than you.
critical है ना, जैसे आपने बोला कि when you are outside you are representing the whole ethnicity of being an Indian.
Yeah.
ठीक है, यहाँ पे इंडिया से हो आप दिल्ली में चले गए, यूपी में मैं दिल्ली से हूँ, stuff like that, all of us look the same, right?
look the same,
मेरे को ये लगता है जो आपने की बात बोली यहाँ पे वो ये है कि basically when you go out, when you step out of your house, you are representing your own family, whole family, right? कि जैसे कहा जाता है कि यार आपके घर वालों ने
That's the important thing to remember, which I don't think a lot of people will understand. And I'm in the UK, right? British Pakistani, like I mentioned. Now, even though I'm born here, when I go out, I feel like I'm representing my community. And I do know a lot of Caucasian people won't have to feel that way, right? Because they don't have anything to prove. But it's different for us. That's the big thing. It's different for us when we go out. We feel like so much under pressure, we're under so much stress all the time that it's unbearable at times, because there might be someone else, same as me, who's given a bad look outside, and then that makes the second person in that shop, let's say, or anywhere, look bad, and it puts you under pressure, because then you're just grouped as one ethnic group, and having these same kind of mindset, which isn't the case. You know, there are a lot of people who are educated here, who've gone through the full education process and built their life here, and they don't have that mindset. But there are certain people who are like that, and we'll get into that later on when this video talks about it. I'm just trying to translate what they're saying is that they've been around the world, and they're from India, you see. That's where they're born from. I wasn't born abroad. I'm born here, but I still feel what they feel, because they're telling us when they went abroad how they felt, how they've been looked upon.
को ये सिखाया. So just like that, if you are an Indian abroad and right now you are under the lens, right? So you do anything, you would be like कि तुम Indian ऐसे हो. The first thing they would do is point fingers at you, right? So the collective responsibility that each and every Indian carries right now abroad is critical. No matter what country you are in, no matter you are in North American continent, doesn't matter if you are in Europe, doesn't matter if you are in Southeast Asia or any country in Southeast Asia or either Far East in Japan or Russia, right? Indian लोग इतने सारे हैं that हम आपको हर जगह as an immigrant population cesspool ज़्यादा मिलेंगे ही मिलेंगे, right? Because we are large in number, सबसे ज़्यादा population है दुनिया में हमारी. But at the end of the day, what did you think? That there is a, जैसे वो बोलते हैं ना, एक string of commonality है हर जगह एक Indian behavior में, और अभी वो Indian behavior में जो string of commonality है, that is being identified as the lack of civic sense. That's what I think. What did you notice?
पहले तो भाई I'll just add to what you said कि you know कि just because ये सिर्फ conversation वहाँ तक लिमिटेड नहीं है कि आप अगर बाहर जा रहे हो तो आप इंडिया को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हो. मतलब इट्स रिप्रेजेंटेशन सिर्फ मतलब you know काफी लोग फिर रिलेट ना कर पाए कि हम तो कभी बाहर गए नहीं. आपने सही बोला ना कि जैसे आप घर के बाहर जाते हो तो आप घर को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हो, है ना. आप अगर जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मैं जब दिल्ली में शिफ्ट हुआ था, मैं यूपी के एक शहर से हूँ, तो मैं फिर तब मैं यूपी वाला था, है ना. अभी अगर मैं साउथ जाऊंगा तो मैं नॉर्थ वाला हो जाऊंगा. अगर मैं घर से अपने पड़ोस भी जाता हूं तो आप हमेशा यू आर मोर देन योर नेम, यू आर एवरी सिंगल टाइम यू आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग सम ऑफ योर कल्चर, एंड वो कॉन्टेक्चुअली चेंज हो सकता है. और उसको जरूरी नहीं है आपको देश के बाहर जाना पड़े, आप अपने स्टेट के बाहर, आप अपने सिटी के बाहर, अपने घर के बाहर भी जाओगे तो आप अपने नाम से कुछ ज्यादा लेके चलते हो अपने साथ में, है ना. दैट वाज इट. एंड द सेकंड, व्हाट वाज योर सेकंड क्वेश्चन?
आपको क्या लगता है कि एक स्ट्रिंग ऑफ कॉमनैलिटी क्या थी कि द इंडियन बिहेवियर, हाउ इंडियंस बिहेव, लाइक लैक ऑफ सिविक सेंस की बात जो होती है आजकल इंटरनेट पे, आई थिंक आई हैवंट सीन एज मच इंडियन हेट.
भाई सेम, मैंने आज तक अपने, अब ये तो ये कह लो कि आप एक तो बबल होता है, आपको समझ में आता है कि आप एक तरीके के कंटेंट से इंटरेक्ट कर रहे हो तो वही तरीके.
I don't know why they're getting so much hate, but it's just not them. I think they feel like the Indians are feeling like the hate's just towards them. It's not just towards them, to be honest. To add, it's against all ethnic groups who are a different color, because of the economic downturn that a lot of these countries are facing, because of the lack of infrastructure for decades that the governments have themselves not invested in, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the background which I'm not going to mention on here, but you can understand what I'm saying. The money is not going towards public services. The whatever was built back in the day, when things were getting built, that's the time when money was put in. And then the local councils, for example, in the UK and places like this, in like the government hasn't really invested in maintaining them places, like old structures, bridges, the roads even. They're not maintaining them on time when they should have repairs and certain things going on, because they want to save every penny. And I'm not going to get into where that money is going, but basically that's where it's falling short. And then you get these issues where things are falling apart, so they can see that's going on. And then basically other things go on, like where there's not enough jobs available, or certain other things change, as in with modern progression in life, and and then some people are left behind. But then you can see obviously the environment as well, which I can understand how they feel because I see around and it's not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago as in infrastructure wise. Road maintenance, bridges and all this type of stuff is just falling apart. And that's not the issue because some immigrants have come over or people are come over with work visas and other things. It's from the government side of things where they're not using that money towards to improving that. But the scapegoat goes to the easiest scapegoat's going to be, that different colored people are doing this to the country, which is not entirely true. So I wanted to get that point in there as well.
ठीक है कंटेंट एल्गोरिदम आपको दिखाएगा बट देन मैं दूसरी अगर मैं किसी के प्रोफाइल से भी देख रहा हूँ मतलब कभी मेरे साथ होता है मैं एक्सपेरिमेंट करता रहता हूँ बिकॉज माय जॉब इज न्यूज तो मैं कभी अपनी कंट्री चेंज कर लूंगा कभी वीपीएन से करूंगा कभी दूसरी आईडी कभी एल्गोरिदम रीसेट कर दूंगा है ना वो इंस्टाग्राम पे आता है और मैं कहीं भी जा रहा हूँ खासकर एक्स पे द हेट अगेंस्ट इंडियंस रेसिज्म क्लियर हेट मतलब वो रेसिज्म भी नहीं कहोगे आपकी स्टीरियोटाइपिंग भी नहीं हो रही वो बस की भाव हरामजादों को यहाँ से उसका क्लियर अंग्रेजी में ना 50 पैराग्राफ उसका एक लाइन ये
Yeah, he's right. What he's saying is that wherever he's seen it is saying just get rid of them, like get them out the country. That is not going to solve the issue. The roads are not going to be repaired. The bridges are not going to be maintained. Still, even if all these ethnic groups left those countries, you're not going to have a perfect country again because it's all down to the councils and the governments. The investments that they put in back into the country is what you're going to get, just like as you would in a business. So there's bigger problems at play than just having these ethnic groups. We've always had these, people moving countries and working out places, and that's not been the issue. There's been a lot of wealth that's been gained in a lot of countries from people coming from abroad and working. Like for example, I'm not going to go into my personal life, but people's grandparents and so on after the World War II came here from India or Pakistan, however you want to look at it, from China, wherever you want to look from it, as a perspective. And they worked here really hard in the factories and other places where there was a shortfall of men who could work the hard labor jobs. So they didn't just come over because they could come over because it was all just let's just come across to these countries. It's because they were invited into these countries because they were required. And that's the bit that people forget. They can't just come here and then just work in a factory 24/7 and not have a house, not have a family. They can't just live alone and be some sort of animal, and not a human being. They're gonna have to make a life where they live, because it's not a case that they come over to a different country and work there 2 years and 5 years and then off we go. That's not how it works. And I think there's that type of understanding that a lot of people don't get, and they just jump to conclusions and comments and things that are displayed in the media, and people just go with it. They need to research and think about these things, especially if you're in a civilized country and you're educated. You should be using that education and the logical thinking that you've developed to research and think these things through, and then have that opinion, I believe.
और इतना मैंने कभी नहीं देखा पिछले जो मैं लगभग कम से कम 2 या 3 महीनों से देख रहा हूँ वो काफी टाइम से रहा होगा बट नाउ आई एम सेइंग आई एम स्टार्टिंग टू नोटिस इट वेरी प्राइमरीली कि भाई ये तो बहुत ही ज्यादा हो रहा है और यार बाहर जाते हो तो आपको वो कभी कभी फील होता है मतलब है ना सटल रेसिज्म जिसको कहते हैं ना सटल कि आपको कोई कुछ कह नहीं रहा
Subtle
आपसे कोई कुछ बोल नहीं रहा
racism,
बट समवेयर डाउन द लाइन यू फेल्ट कि इफ आई वर अ गोरा और इफ आई वर नॉट इंडियन एट दिस टाइम या फिर दिस बहुत इसका एग्जांपल है मैं आपको वीडियो मिलेगी तो मैं आपको बताऊंगा
It's
भेजूंगा
true.
एक वीडियो है
This
जिसमें
is
एक ब्लॉगर
true.
होता है वो जा रहा होता है और देयर आर बंच ऑफ गर्ल्स एंड लाइक वाइट गर्ल्स उनसे बात करता है और दिखाता है मैं व्लॉगिंग सो लड़कियां बोलती है ओ आई कैन वी से हाय या ग्रेट वी आर हैविंग गुड टाइम वी आर गोइंग टू पार्टी वेयर आर यू फ्रॉम सो कहती है वी आर ऑस्ट्रेलियंस और समथिंग एंड बोलता है ये पूछता है वेयर आर यू फ्रॉम तो बोलता है फ्रॉम इंडिया और उन विजिबली क्योंकि कैमरा सबके सामने था वो बिल्कुल सेल्फी कैम पे था उन सबके चेहरे बदल जाते हैं उनके एक्सप्रेशंस बदल जाते हैं ओ इंडिया
See, this is the thing I don't understand. And I know there's a lot of things behind that, because there's certain things that are wrong in different ethnic cultures, where we're perceived as being the same, but that could be in any society. There might be one or two people who don't have the civilized sense, how to speak to someone. So it's not just, I think, the Indian country or Pakistan or wherever people are coming from. It's in every society. I think the issue is though is that when they'll mention it later on, but when a lot of the people who were invited into the countries and with just free open borders, and there weren't checks done, how educated they are, what skills they have, they haven't adapted to the countries that they've went to, and then you see these people, you see them people who might be of Indian culture, Pakistan culture, at any different ethnic group from that home country, they won't understand how it is, and they'll approach people and do maybe something that's wrong or not appropriate, or do certain things around that area which causes an offense or looks really bad, and then you get that label, they don't know what they're doing, they're throwing things into the river, or they're not using the bin. But I'll get to that later on when they mention it.
I have nothing to do with that video, but जो दिल दुखता है वो सब देख के कि भाई ये
Absolutely. Damn culture बन गया ना भाई. Hating on Indians.
Yeah.
So how
I
are you
mean,
tackling
I'm
this?
not Indian,
It has
but
become a
I
trend.
feel that
It has
pain.
ever since Trump came into power. ठीक है? It already existed. But if you go back to the most recent nascent stage of the hate against Indians would be the, let's say कि कहाँ से शुरू हुआ, ठीक है? अभी जो recently हम जो देख रहे हैं, और अभी तो जो हम देख रहे हैं वो peak है. This is the peak. But it started all when Trump came into power. जो white supremacy का जो पूरा वो लेके आया ना, make America great again. इसका एक बहुत बड़ा cornerstone था the hate against Mexican, the hate against Southeast Asians. और हमारी सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत पता ये भी है that our color is the same as, we look the same as the Pakistanis.
It's not about religion.
And by the way, बहुत सारा ऐसा भी नहीं है कि पूरा जितना भी hate है ये सब कुछ ऑर्गेनिक है. A lot of it is clear propaganda by some Pakistanis and Bangladeshi pages जो सामने दिखता है ना? वो instigate करते हैं, but एक undercurrent भी है जो उसको कहते हैं ना, उसको क्या propel करता है, क्या कहते हैं उसको? propel करता है उसको, है ना?
So basically the point is कि हमारी community में,
I mean, I know they're mentioning about Pakistan and everything, but I think the thing is, it's not them who are basically putting this hate out against Indians, or there might be, I don't know 100% if they are, but we all get the same experience. It's even not about the country, it's about the ethnic group, the color.
हैं कुछ ऐसी सेसफुल्स हैं लोगों के जो बाहर जाकर नहीं चेंज होते. अच्छा, ये जो आजकल चल रहा है कि हमारे सबसे बड़ा आपको आर्गुमेंट गौरव से आते दिखेगा, बहाने ढूंढ रहे हैं वो रेसिज्म के कि असिमिलेट नहीं होते. मेरे हिसाब से जो इंडियन कम्युनिटी है ना, वो सबसे ज्यादा असिमिलेट होती है. मैं बताता हूं कैसे. दिस इज अ वेरी कंट्रोवर्शियल टेक. हमारे को बचपन से हम कॉलोनियल रूल हमारे कंट्री में था, तो हमारे जो करिकुलम्स है मैक्सिमम हर किसी को इंग्लिश समझनी आती है, बोलनी आती है मैक्सिमम लोगों को. द पीपल लेट्स से द ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल हु माइग्रेट, ठीक है, जैसे मैं हो गया, मैं पढ़ा लिखा हूं, कॉलेज गया हूं, देयर आर पीपल हु कम हियर फॉर मिनियल जॉब्स, जो ट्रक चलाते हैं, स्टफ लाइक दैट. उनको अंडरस्टैंडेबल इंग्लिश आती है, हमने 10वीं 12वीं तक इंग्लिश पढ़ी है, ठीक है, चाहे टूटी फूटी बोले हम बोल लेते हैं. हैव यू सीन पीपल माइग्रेटिंग फ्रॉम द ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक, ईस्टर्न यूरोपियन ब्लॉक, अल्बानिया, स्लोवेनिया, स्लोवाकिया, इस इन कंट्री से जो आ रहे हैं, रशिया से आ रहे हैं, इनसे इंग्लिश नहीं बोली जाती. द एक्सेंट दैट दे हैव इज सो फकिंग थिक. एंड और मैं ये कह रहा हूं कि वो भी 3-3 4-4 साल के बाद भी, 5-5 10-10 साल के बाद भी, ठीक है, नंबर 1 ये इनसे बोली नहीं जाती. हैव यू सीन इमिग्रेंट चाइनीज पीपल? दे कैन नॉट स्पीक इंग्लिश टू सेव देयर लाइव्स. वेरी रेयरली दे.
So what he's talking about, I'll agree to some sense, without getting too political, but he is 100% right here. So the British Empire, right, basically was in India, which was Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all of them before it got divided. Now, the point he's trying to make is that we have basic English taught there because of the history that we've got, that the British were there. So English is taught there in the schools as well. So we know basic English and other things. Where I don't, the thing is that I want to point as well is a lot of people who live in UK or America, they don't understand this. They don't know anything about history, and I'm not saying everyone's the same. Some people might know it. But what I'm saying is they may not look into this, that they don't know that we have this education process in them countries as well, where they are taught basic English. So it's not like that we don't know anything. But people are they just perceive any other country like that because they've not been there, they've not lived there. This is the worst thing I think about the behaviors of human beings, is that they just perceive things and just make assumptions. I hate doing them things. I don't like making assumptions, because you can make an assumption about anyone who's walking across the street and you don't know anything about them and what they went through in their life. And then you should never do that. It's a basic human level being thing. You don't have to be educated, I believe, in my mindset, to have the understanding that you shouldn't make assumptions about people. There's nothing to do with education about that. It's just common sense. It's about empathy and being a human being. But that's lost. I've seen a lot because people are so involved in their lives that they don't remember that it's just not where you live, which is the whole world. The whole world consists of a lot of different cultures, a lot of different religions, a lot of different people of height, sizes, colors, all sorts of things, genders. You just go into all this type of stuff, there's so much that makes every individual different. And getting back to what he's saying is a lot of people who do come across on work visas who were Indians or what, a different type of ethnic groups who came across to be doctors, anything, which they could work in, they knew the basic English. Or even if they were doing the small labor jobs, they knew basic English. Not like really broken. Some people are like that. I've been out about and they don't know basic, but most of the people who are getting educated in the South Asian countries know basic English, right? Now, when they go to school, a lot of people who've got a different color, they mostly then identified of being saying, oh well, he won't know English because of course he's this color, and I've seen that said outside when I've been there, where you can see that person behind you is thinking that automatically, but they won't think that about anyone who's from the Eastern European side of the world. It's just because they're easy to blend in. You see, we will most likely be standing out. If you went to in a shop and you were the only South Asian there, you are going to stand out there. And I'm not saying that's the problem of whoever's shopping there, that there's only one South Asian, but that assumption is already made before you went into the door that, here's a South Asian, here's a different person coming into the shop. He doesn't know how to, you know, look through the boxes of fruit. He doesn't know how to pick up the items. He doesn't know how to use the till. All these assumptions are automatically made, even without them having to think too much, because subconsciously, in the media and everything that's been mentioned, it's in their head. It's in their head, and it's basically like, when people have panic attacks, as an example I'm giving here, they're not thinking about those things that are stressing them out, but they're in their head. That's a similar situation here. And I'll let him continue because I've ranted out a bit, but I had to get that point out. There are a lot of things this guy mentions which I really applaud him for. He's really did an honest, transparent video here about these things.
Number 2, they live in their communities. ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक के जितने भी आप गोरों को देखोगे, रशिया से, स्लोवाकिया से, यहाँ से कुछ भी आ रहा है, हंगरी से लोग आ रहे हैं, ये अपने ही गुट में रहते हैं, ये नहीं है
That's true. They don't assimilate. I've seen that. You come to where I am in the UK and you'll notice that.
सिमुलेट करते, ठीक है? जैसे, और फिर चाइनीज आर प्रोबेबली सम ऑफ द मोस्ट इन्फ्लुएंशियल इमिग्रेंट्स इन नॉर्थ अमेरिका. आप यूएस चले जाओ, कनाडा आ जाओ, अगर इंडियंस के बाद कोई बहुत डोमिनेंट ग्रुप है ना, तो वो चाइनीज का है, ठीक है? एंड दे आर नोन फॉर ऑल द राइट रीजंस. आई विल कम टू द रॉन्ग रीजंस दैट इंडियंस आर नोन फॉर, बट द होल पॉइंट इज, जो असिमिलेशन वाला ये जो है ना कि असिमिलेट नहीं करते. अब ये मैं बताता हूं आपको, असिमिलेट करने वाला ये आ कहां से रहा है. असिमिलेट करने का आ रहा है कि हमारे कुछ स्टेट्स हैं, ठीक है, 2 या 3 ऐसे स्टेट्स हैं जहां से एक सर्टेन डायस्पोरा ऑफ पीपल इमिग्रेट करते हैं, एंड व्हाट दे डू इज दे ब्रेक रेड लाइट्स, दे ओवर स्पीड, दे किल पीपल, दे ड्राइव ऑन द रॉन्ग साइड.
That's true. I have seen some Indians do that as well where I am, and it's and he mentions why that is, but it's true. It's in every culture like that though. That's not just one culture or one ethnic group. It's a society problem where people do speed through red lights and do things which are not appropriate. But I don't think that's got to do with a lot of people coming from abroad. It's just about common sense and people trying to just get to somewhere quickly as possible. But there are certain factors that can avoid that.
They shit on the streets, they litter on the streets. ये जो चीजें हैं ना, ये चल रही थी पहले से, पर इंटरनेट पे अब हेट हो गई बहुत कॉमन कि हाँ भाई किसी भी इंडियन को हेट कर दो. तो ये चीजें हो तो रही थी पहले से, सिविक सेंस हमारे लोगों में नहीं थी, उस चीज को और प्रोपेल कर दिया कि हाँ भाई बहाना, पहले से एक रीजन था, अब हमको बहाना मिल गया, हाँ ये तो ये करने को मारो. Have you seen the amount of crime the Albanians, the Eastern Bloc Europeans are involved in? किसी को पता ही नहीं है क्यों?
Because of the spotlight of the whole media that's put in that, immigrants or people of this culture or color are causing the I don't know what to call it, the downfall of a certain country or continent. They're blaming them people, and then the spotlight is more on them when certain things do happen. and I'm always like, oh, me and my wife and children are always like, throw it in the bin that you see, rather than throwing it on the floor. It's just common sense. But people unfortunately do that, even in my own society, and I don't like it, to be honest. So I'm not kind of vouching for saying that there's the perfect. What I'm saying is that it's certain people who maybe have come from Pakistan, India, from certain areas, and they've come here because the work visa or something was available, and there's not been any enough potential detailed screening of people who are coming here to see if they are educated enough and certain other things that they can follow. And then they don't know when they come here that there's bins you're meant to be throwing there. You're not meant to meant to be doing these certain things. So it's on both sides. The country that's sending them and the country that's inviting them. It's both sides to blame.
क्योंकि उनका रंग गोरा है, दे डोंट स्टैंड आउट।
Yeah.
रेसिज्म उनके अगेंस्ट क्यों नहीं है? रशिया से कोई इमिग्रेट हो रहा है, कितने इंग्लिश बोलता है भाई, बता दियो मेरे को, और कितने लोग जानते हैं? ठीक है, मेरे यहाँ पे जिम में 3 से 4 रशियन दोस्त हैं, वो सिर्फ मेरे से इंग्लिश में बात करते होंगे, आपस में वो सिर्फ स्ट्रिक्टली रशियन में बात करते हैं, स्ट्रिक्टली रशियन में बात करते हैं, ठीक है, और वो क्या बोलते हैं कुछ नहीं समझ आता। व्हेन यू आर स्टैंडिंग इन अ ग्रुप ऑफ मल्टीकल्चरल पीपल, द फर्स्ट थिंग इज दैट यू नीड टू कम्युनिकेट इन अ लैंग्वेज जो हर किसी को समझ आए, सो दैट हां, जो एवरीबॉडी कैन अंडरस्टैंड दैट, कि मेरे को एलियनेटेड फील नहीं हो रहा, राइट? तो अगर 3 रशियन खड़े हैं मेरे सामने, मैं उनके सामने चौथा इंडियन हूं, अभी तक हम इंग्लिश में बात कर रहे थे, लेकिन दे क्रैक जोक, ठीक है? तो दैट इज, अगर यही कोई इंडियन करे कि 3 इंडियन खड़े हैं और बीच में एक गोरा खड़ा है, तो वो गोरा जाके ट्विटर पे लिख देगा, यार मैं इनके साथ खड़ा हुआ था, ये आपस में कुछ बोलने लग गए, एंड आई फेल्ट दैट आई वाज नॉट इंक्लूडेड, एंड दिस इज द रीजन व्हाई दे डोंट असिमिलेट।
Yeah, it's more brought out, let's say, or magnified. Let's say if there's a group of Asian people who are speaking in their own language in a shop, and then the other person who's the outsider thinks, oh, what they talking about? They're talking about me or something. That's what he's trying to say, and then it looks like that they're not assimilating there, but that's not the case. It could it could be that they do speak English, but because they've got together with a few other people who are from that same country, then they might speak a different language. That's what he's saying.
These are the stupid reasons people give to throw racism at Indians.
These are all stupid reasons for racism.
हमारे लोग हैं ऐसे जो बिल्कुल
Shouldn't be
ही रॉन्ग
racist
साइड पे
for
लोग मार
that.
देते हैं। अभी वो फैमिली मार दी एक ट्रक करने, मेरे ख्याल 6-8 महीने पहले की बात है।
वो उसने
पता नहीं
अचानक
क्या
से
हुआ
मुड़ा और
उसमें।
गाड़ी सीधी
हाँ,
लग गई। आई हैव सीन
हाँ, एग्जैक्टली, ठीक है, वहां से तू मोड़ नहीं सकता था। अच्छा, अब केस क्या है, ये तो गलत है ही, लेकिन दिस इज नॉट द ओनली इंस्टेंस, और भी गोरे हैं जो ये करते हैं। ऐसे ऐसे हाईवेज पे एक्सीडेंट्स रोज होते हैं,
Yeah.
एंड एवरीबॉडी फ्रॉम एवरी
Accidents are
एथनिसिटी
caused
इज
by
इन्वॉल्वड इन
everyone,
these
he's saying.
accidents.
So
But why
when
is
one
their name
accident
not
happens
propelled? It's not put up on
from a certain ethnic
social media,
group,
because number one,
it's
hits नहीं आएंगे, आपको views नहीं मिलेंगे,
it's
क्योंकि
on the
Indian hate
news
trend
more
hate
because
an
of
Indian, no
there'll be
matter
more
what he does, hate
views,
an Indian, it will get you
YouTube.
views, it will get you engagement,
That's what he's
right?
saying
एक
on
गोरा कुछ मार
social
देता है। अच्छा,
media.
गोरे सारे सेम नहीं होते ना, हर किसी को लगता है सारे गोरे अमेरिकन हैं, सारे गोरे ब्रिटिश हैं, ऐसे नहीं होते ना।
हाँ, और क्या?
बहुत सारे गोरे कमिंग फ्रॉम द ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक्स, कमिंग फ्रॉम एक्सपैट गोरे जो है किसी भी और कंट्री से, आप यूरोपियन ले लो, दे गेट अवे विद स्टूपिड थिंग्स।
अरे पता है, इसका एक बहुत अच्छा पर्सपेक्टिव है जो मुझे थाईलैंड में किसी एक इंडियन ने दिया था। सो आप जो कह रहे हो ना कि वो गोरे दिखने वाले, ऐसे कहने को हमारे यहाँ भी बहुत ऐसे हैं जैसे जो गोरे रंग के होते हैं। एंड उसने मुझे ये बोला था कि इट इज नॉट दैट यू डोंट हैव द हेट इज, अगर मैंने कहा कि अगर मैं इंडियन हूं लोग क्या सोचेंगे, तो उसने मुझे बोला था कि तुम्हें इंडियन, ये नहीं कि तुम इंडियन हो, बस तुम्हें इंडियन दिखना नहीं चाहिए। एक टिपिकल इंडियन क्या ना, इंडियन मैन की एक इमेज है ना, वो टिपिकल इंडियन मैन तुम मत देखो, क्योंकि उसकी एक इमेज बन चुकी है, वही वो तोंद लेके, जीन्स पे, स्पोर्ट्स शूज, मूछें, है ना। ये मेरा ओपिनियन नहीं है, दिस इज समथिंग ही टोल्ड मी कि ये ऐसे लोग सोचते हैं कि टिपिकल इंडियन आदमी बिल्कुल जैसे खासकर थाईलैंड के पटाया में कि झुंड में आएंगे, ठीक है, टोन होगी सबकी, आदमी होंगे, औरत कोई नहीं होगी, ठीक है, बदबू मार रहे होंगे, हाइजीनिक नहीं होंगे, और यहाँ वहां लड़कियों को घूर रहे होंगे। ये टिपिकल इंडियन आदमी की इमेज बना दी गई है, और वो आप
Yeah. There's a certain image that's been made, and that's what's basically how everyone thinks that they're all the same. And I always hope that I can put a different image across if I'm going out anywhere shopping or anywhere I work or any friends I have, that it doesn't come across like the what's the norm or what's the typical perspective or image that they've put out there about a certain group of people. I try and be as civilized and educated as possible, but it's not written on your face, you see. That's the thing. That's what I'm trying to clarify, and these guys are too speaking about. When you're walking into a room or anywhere, your face isn't gonna have on your forehead, you've got, you're educated, you've got a degree, this, you think logically, you do this type of things. That's not there until you speak to them, and that's where the stereotype is. That's where the stereotype begins, where you're just judged on on one thing or one or two things.
आपको बस वैसा नहीं दिखना है. अगर आप वैसे नहीं दिख रहे हो तो then they can judge you on your merit. Anyone can. बट उसके अलावा हाँ, this is what a typical Indian mindset जो आजकल इंटरनेट पर बन गया है ना. एक चीज और जो आपने बोली, ये जो है ना कि डायस्पोरा, हेट अगेंस्ट इंडियन डायस्पोरा, अपने साथ प्रॉब्लम ये भी है कि जो अपना डायस्पोरा है उसकी इमेज बहुत ड्रास्टिकली शिफ्ट हुई है, क्योंकि आज से कुछ ही साल पहले, एंड यू आर द बेटर पर्सन टू आंसर फॉर दिस, इंडियंस वर द मोस्ट हाई क्वालिटी इमिग्रेंट्स. अगर आप कहो कि भाई ये आ रहे हैं व्हाइट कॉलर जॉब्स करने, ये आ रहे हैं इंजीनियर्स, ये आ रहे हैं डॉक्टर्स, एंड ये वो हैं जो जैसे आपकी तरह यू विल कम, यू विल वर्क इन हाई लेवल पोजीशन इन एमएनसीज, एंड तभी हम बोलते हैं कि जितनी बड़ी बड़ी कंपनीज हैं उनके आधों के सीईओज इंडिया ना, तभी क्योंकि पहले इंडियंस वर गुड ब्राउन पीपल जो आ रहे हैं, एंड देन यू नो दे आर डूइंग बिजनेस और दे आर एडिंग टू योर इकोनॉमी, दे आर डूइंग गुड लेबर. अब रीसेंट शिफ्ट ये हुआ है, उसका अच्छा एग्जांपल ऑस्ट्रेलिया में मिलता है.
Yeah, that was a lot back in the day as well when I was young, or even before my time. A lot of people who came here, corner shops, you know, did the markets, worked any job they could, and tried their best to, you know, be civilized and assimilate into the culture. And what can happen is, you know, decades of work of families and societies, you know, where they have tried to do this, is just thrown back to square one when you see a lot of it in social media or in the media labeling, you know, them people as a certain way, and anything that they've worked towards to get that mindset changed in that area or the country is just then, you know, gone overnight. That's what can happen, and a lot of crime is being focused on with a lot of people who are from different ethnic groups, whereas in, you know, crime has been been a thing which was, you know, centuries ago. You know, it's not something that's new, and it happens everywhere.
आए हैं पढ़ने के लिए, लेकिन किसी भी यूनिवर्सिटी से बैचलर डिग्री ले ली, वहां पे जाके डिग्री के बेसिस पे वीजा ले लिया, बाद में जब उन्होंने इन्वेस्टिगेट किया तो पता चला कि भाई नाम की डिग्री मिल रही है, कोई डिग्री का मतलब ही नहीं है. तो दिस इमेज ऑफ ये आके ट्रक चलाते हैं रैश करके, ये सिविक सेंस फॉलो नहीं करते, लिटर करते हैं, रैश ड्राइविंग करते हैं, स्कैम करते हैं, ये जो रिसेंटली एक पूल आया है ऑफ एंड इट इज आल्सो फॉल्ट ऑन आवर पार्ट, है ना, कि हमको भी तो देखना चाहिए ना कि हम किन लोगों को भेज रहे हैं इंडियन पासपोर्ट के साथ. एक बहुत वीडियो वायरल हुई थी कि चूतिया सा कोई यूट्यूब
where they're just sending random people out of the countries, right? About that, you know, from the perspective of where people are coming from or leaving from. They need that basic education, other things as well, before they're allowed to go abroad to work anywhere. And the people and other countries who are inviting them, they need to have that screening as well. I don't think it's strong enough. And the people who then come through, you know, as he's going to mention, they don't have that basic sense of how to live in a different community or adapt, because they've never been brought up that way. You see, that's the difficulty of trying to get this understanding, you know, between two different continents or countries or communities. It's quite difficult, I'll be honest, to, you know, get that connection.
है झारखंड साइड का है, कहीं पे गया है पटाया में लड़कियों को, आज इनको पेलेंगे, आज इनको थामेंगे, ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे. मतलब पहली गाली मुंह से जो निकली थी ना, वो मतलब सीधी पहली देख के ना लाइक ना कुछ, सीधी गाली निकली मेरे मुंह से कि तुम क्या सोच रहे हो भाई, मतलब तुमको समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि पासपोर्ट के आधार कार्ड थोड़ी है तुम्हारा, इट इज योर फकिंग आइडेंटिटी, इट इज आइडेंटिटी, बीइंग एन इंडियन, यू आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग योर कंट्री, और तुम ऐसी बातें कर रहे हो. तो ऐसी क्वालिटी ऑफ पीपल जब बाहर जाके सोशल मीडिया का भी टाइम आ गया, तो वो वीडियोस भी बनाते हैं, ये उसको अपलोड भी करते हैं. तो ये जो पूरा है ना,
I don't like it when I see people from Pakistan or even from my society where they speak, you know, with really offensive language about, let's say, you know, other ethnic groups or maybe even females, let's say. I don't agree with it. You know, there are a lot of, they don't have common sense on them, and that's where there's a really bad representation of, you know, colored people or that certain ethnic group.
Screen who should have been trained to go out, how to represent your country, how to be properly, even tourist or as an immigrant. एक वो उन लोग जो अनट्रेन्ड लोग चले गए, कहते हैं ना लेस सिविलाइज्ड लोग चले गए, और वो फेस बन रहे हैं.
Yeah.
अब सुंदर पछाई नहीं है, है ना. अब संदीप फ्रॉम बरेली, जिसको लोग कहते हैं इंडियन जैसे होते
of India, Pakistan, and those, and that's where that's where the issue is.
जब इमिग्रेशन देखोगे ना, तो डॉक्टर्स, इंजीनियर्स, मैथमेटिशियंस, प्रोफेसर्स, ठीक है,
15-20 years ago, that's people who were coming.
अब until the mid 2000s जो बाहर जाने का सपना होता था ना इंडिया में, वो बहुत लिमिटेड होता था. आपको हर, अगर आपकी गली में 50 घर हैं, 50 फैमिली, दो शायद ऐसे बंदे होंगे जो गए होंगे, और वो दोनों का गली में ही नाम होगा कि वो बचपन से टॉपर थे यार. Now they have found a way, right? So वो वहां चले गए, 20 साल के बाद they are now settled there, they are representing the Indian community at the highest, at the epitome of academia, right? This used to be the archetype of an immigrant, an Indian immigrant in the North American or the European continent 20 years ago. What happened was early 2010s में ये जो बाहर जाने का कल्चर है ना, ये ब्लो अप हुआ बहुत जबरदस्त तरीके से, क्योंकि इमिग्रेशन, क्योंकि लिबरल सरकार थी उस टाइम, अगर आपको ध्यान होगा, पूरे नॉर्थ अमेरिका में, ठीक है, एटलीस्ट मैं नॉर्थ अमेरिका की बात कर सकता हूँ, और यूरोप में भी, इनफैक्ट यूके में भी बहुत लिबरलाइजेशन उन्होंने कहा कि हमारी इकोनॉमी स्लो डाउन हो रही है, वी नीड इमिग्रेशन नाउ,
Yeah,
ठीक है, एंड योर
exactly.
एंटायर इकोनॉमी कैन नॉट सर्वाइव.
That's what happened. The economy slowed down, and there were certain positions or jobs that were available that weren't getting filled. So what do you do then? If you don't have them skill sets, they then go up. They then start, inviting people from other countries to come work here. That's what's happened. That's what you're saying.
On let's say 50 बहुत अच्छे Indians, you need to call 50,000 now, and all of those 50,000 cannot be doctors and engineers and mathematicians.
Yeah.
So what they did was they opened multiple streams of visas. ठीक है,
That's exactly
कनाडा में
what
ये हुआ कि
happened.
भैया आपको मीनियल जॉब करने, ट्रक चलानी है, हम आपको दे देंगे, ये सब दे देंगे, एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट. अच्छा, ये सब करा गया गुडविल में, कि भाई आओ आप हमारी कंट्री में रहो, हमारी इकोनॉमी में करो, हम आपको अच्छा, आपको लाइफस्टाइल मिलेगा, सब कुछ मिलेगा जो मिलता भी है. लेकिन ये हाथ किसके पड़ गया? ये जाहिलों के हाथ पड़ गया, हमारे देश के एक नंबर के जाहिल डीपीटी के गवारों के हाथ.
इस सेंस में उन्होंने अपने पैरों पे कुल्हाड़ी मारी है. इट्स नॉट जस्ट इंडिया, इट्स ऑल द नेबरिंग कंट्रीज और फ्रॉम अफ्रीका. और ये मतलब क्या ना कि सब बीइंग द डेविल्स एडवोकेट, कि तुमने भी तो ऐसे फालतू के लोगों को
Totally
इनवाइट किया.
agree.
हमारे यहाँ कौन सी कमी है इंजीनियर्स की, डॉक्टर्स की, पीपल हु कैन रियली ऐड टू योर इकोनॉमी, बट तुमने बोल दिया कि हम सबके अब ऑस्ट्रेलिया में वीजा, हमारे यहाँ स्कैमर, ठीक है, यूनिवर्सिटी की फेक डिग्री हुई, पर तुम्हारे यहाँ की सिस्टम नहीं था कि तुम चेक ही नहीं कर पाए कि भाई रैंडमली बस डिग्रियां आई चल रही हो तुम.
भाई रैंडमली अब यही तो कर रहे हैं ना वो. अब कनाडा में क्या कर रहे हैं? पिछले 10 साल में जितनी इमिग्रेशन हुई है, इस साल में खत्म कर दी उन्होंने वो इमिग्रेशन, एब्सोल्युटली वैनिश्ड. लेट्स से कि अगर पिछले 6 साल से हर साल 1 मिलियन इमिग्रेंट आ रहा था, इस साल कुछ 45-50 हजार या 1 लाख.
Exactly what happened there. It might have been fake degrees that they're saying that them people have come over with, but they didn't have any of them skill sets. And then that's where we're getting represented incorrectly, you see, because that's not how the community is. That's not, let's say, some British Indian or British Pakistani lives. But he's saying, like, if you've brought over 50,000 people, and out of them, they're not going to be all doctors, some are going to do the labour jobs and certain other things, but you've not really screened them properly, then that's you're going to have an issue in that country then. And that's what's happened. That's why a lot of people are against, having the people coming over. I mean, illegal immigration is totally different. I'm not going to go into that. That is obviously not legal. So there's certain aspects about that, right, which need to follow process and do certain things. What I'm talking about is people who have come over based on they were approved to come over, not just like come over illegally. But there's so many that come over, they've not been screened because they just wanted people to come in quickly as possible for jobs. I think we saw that after COVID, didn't we, or at that time as well? If I'm incorrect, please leave a comment.
हाँ ये बस.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया पिछले महीने आई थिंक 43% वीजा कैंसिलेशंस की है, स्टूडेंट वीजा कैंसिलेशंस.
इनको जहां तक दिखा लिबरल सरकारों को, या जो भी सरकार थी, लिबरल या राइट विंग जो भी थी, आई डोंट केयर अबाउट इट, जो भी रूलिंग सरकार थी, उनको लगा कि भैया ये वोट बैंक है. फॉर एग्जांपल मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं. मेरे जिम में एक दोस्त है, मैंने कहा तो किसको वोट डालेगा? वो सिटीजन था. दिस इज अबाउट 2 इयर्स अगो. तो उसने कहा यार मैं तो ट्रूडो को डालूंगा. मैंने कहा क्यों? ट्रूडो क्यों डालेगा? कंजर्वेटिव सरकार क्यों नहीं डालेगा? ट्रूडो की पॉलिसी खराब है. उसने कहा यार मुझे पॉलिसी से लेना देना नहीं है, उसने मुझे पीआर दी, उसने मुझे सिटीजनशिप दी. ठीक है. And that is when I could understand that he does not care about the politics, and nobody at large does care about the politics, being an immigrant, which is the worst thing. If you are living in a country, just like the saying goes, when in Rome, do like Romans. कोई भी तुम्हारे को ये नहीं बोल रहा कि तुम अपनी एथनिसिटी को भूल जाओ, तुम अपने कल्चर को भूल जाओ, लेकिन जिस चीज से तुम अपने कंट्री में भाग के आए हो, जिस कूड़े से तुम निकल के आए हो, उस कूड़े को यहाँ मत मचाओ. तुम यहाँ पे तुम अपनी नदियों को माँ बोलते हो, नदियों की ऐसी कर दी तुमने.
छठ पूजा मना रहे हैं टेक्सास में.
भाई मैं बता रहा हूँ, मैंने अपने सामने देखा लेक ह्यूरॉन में, ऑन्टारियो में, ले गए मूर्ति, ठीक है, उनको विसर्जन कर रहे हैं. यही गंद तुम वहां मचा रहे थे, ठीक है, और यही.
See, what you're saying is, why are you carrying over the bad habits from the culture of where you were living before, let's say India, Pakistan, and doing certain things which were not really common sense and approved on back there, but now you're doing it when you've come abroad and making a mess there. What you're saying is like, going into the river and doing certain things, rituals and things like that, where you were making a mess there and now you're making a mess here. And what he means by that is throwing rappers into the river. The river's clean and doing certain things which can make that river dirty. Whereas the people who live in that community or in that country have never done that or made the river polluted. That's where he's making sense. This is true, this shouldn't happen. But then people that have come over that they're mentioning have not been screened and they've come over and they think that's normal there as well, that they can do it. There are certain things in my society as well. I'm a British Pakistani, as I mentioned before, which I don't approve of, which makes us represent, which puts us in a bad light, shall I say, because of certain things that the community will do because they think, oh, we've always done this back home, or the parents always did it back home, so we're going to do it here as well. But from the outside, whoever's looking, it looks like, oh, what the hell are they doing? Oh no, what they've done to our country, this type of thing. Now, I'll be honest there, there's a lot of rubbish and stuff like that when I went abroad that, they don't clean, and they don't put the things into the bins and things like that. But I've seen here as well, it's not just them, it's people who live in this country as well. They don't have to be different ethnic groups, different colours. I've seen people here as well, when you go to town, who just chucking things on the floor. They went to Greg's, had a pasty, wrapped up the, I don't know, crushed the paper, whatever, I don't know, call it, the cans and whatever, and thrown it onto the floor on the grass. So even people who are living here are doing that. So that's just a general problem, I would say. It's not to do with a certain ethnic group, but he is saying there are certain things that different ethnic group people will do, which they've done back when they were in their home country, and it's out of place when they do it outside. And especially if it's not even a good thing that was back there. So why are you doing it here? Why are you bringing it across here?
तुम और पता करने के बाद कह रहे हैं हम सफाई कर देते हैं। अबे भाई, सफाई करने की बात नहीं है, बात ये है कि तुम
That's
उनके
not
कल्चर
about
में ऐसे
cleaning.
स्टैंड आउट कर रहे हो क्रिटिकली, और उनको ये दिख रहा है
You stand
उनके
out
कल्चर
in
में
the
नदियों में सांप
that
रखा जाता है, वो
culture.
टॉफी का
Yeah.
रैपर तक नहीं फेंकते। तुम नंगे होकर उसमें घुस रहे हो, उसमें फूल विसर्जित कर रहे हो, पानी दूध डाल रहे हो, उसमें मूर्तियां बहा रहे हो, तो वो तुम्हारे को गाली नहीं बकेंगे तो क्या करेंगे?
इस मामले में भाई मैं कहता हूँ, और इसमें मेरे को
Idols in the
घंटा फर्क नहीं
river.
पड़ता, कोई
Yeah.
मुझे कितना भी ट्रोल कर ले, हम हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ हिपोक्रेट्स हैं। फलाने आके राइट विंग करके ट्रोल कर लें, कुछ कह के गाली देने में जितनी देनी हो दो, लेकिन तुम्हें भी पता है मैं सच बोल रहा हूँ, क्योंकि तुम वो देश हो जो कहते हो कि गंगा हमारी माँ है, नदी हमारी माँ है, यहाँ हम छठ पूजा। क्या कर रहे हो तुम गंगा के साथ भाई? इसका मतलब आई जस्ट गिव यू एन एग्जांपल कि हम कितना बेवकूफी जाहिलियत है। एक लड़का था ऋषिकेश में, यहाँ पे बहुत अनट्रीटेड सीवेज जा रहा था गंगा नदी में, ठीक है, तो वो दिखा रहा था कि ये देखो हम इस गंगा को माँ बोलते हैं और इसमें गंदा मलमूत्र अनट्रीटेड जा रहा है, जबकि हम टैक्स के पैसे दे रहे हैं इसको साफ करने के लिए। तो एक चूतिया उसके कमेंट रिप्लाई में पता क्या कहता है, ए गंगा नहीं गंगा माँ बोल, और गाली दे दी उसको। मैंने कहा चूतिया, पॉइंट।
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He didn't get the point of that the river shouldn't be polluted and we should keep it clean. He was more about, oh, why did you say that name? It should be not Ganga, it's Ganga Ma. You didn't that. Is that your comment in that video? And that's what he's saying. Did you not understand the point that the river should not be polluted? That's the point that was in that video he's saying. But the comment was totally about, oh, you didn't say the name correctly. What's that about? That shows the level of kind of mindset that some people have got.
दैट इज एक्जैक्टली हिज पॉइंट कि तुम किसी गंगा को अगर माँ बोलोगे नदी को, तुम उसकी हालत ये थोड़ी करोगे। हमारे
Yeah.
देश में पता क्या है, आएंगे पूजेंगे नदी को, हम उस पे विसर्जन, उसमें पूरा अपना पूजक सामग्री कर लेंगे, और सामग्री जिस पॉलिथीन में आई थी वो पॉलिथीन भी फेंक देंगे। तो तुमने पूजा क्या की? तुमने ढोंग किया। पूजा करते तो तुम 4 पॉलिथीन जो डली है उसको लेके जाते ना अपने साथ में, तो उसमें एक ऐड करके थोड़ी जाते। और ये अगर बोल दो तो हमारी संस्कृति हमारा कल्चर है, घंटा तुम्हारा कल्चर, तुम हो ही नहीं, तुम ढोंगी हो, तुम एक नंबर के। और फिर यही हरकतें तो जो, और ये ऐसा है नहीं विदेशियों को दिखता नहीं है यार। कितनी शर्म आती है जब सिक्किम में, आप एक बार सर्च करना, जापानीज टूरिस्ट आए पहाड़ों पे, वो बेचारे क्लीनिंग ड्राइव कर रहे थे, वो एंजॉय करने आए थे। क्या इमेज बन के रह गई तुम्हारी? वो आए हैं पहाड़ों पे हमारा कचरा उठा रहे हैं, ये तुम्हारा टूरिज्म बन के रह गया है। और फिर तुम जब ये सारी लेके, अगर तुम छठ पूजा करने के बाद, एक छठ पूजा का जब त्योहार हो, उसके अगले दिन अगर गंगा माँ पिछले दिन के मुकाबले ज्यादा साफ है, तो तुम छठ पूजा के टेक्सास में करो ना, चुपचाप घर पे बैठो अपने और फोन लगाओ अपने बिहार में, सिवान में, कि सुनो मम्मी जाना छठ पूजा करना, पर नदी को साफ करके आना, तब वो तुम इंडियन डैश।
He's totally right about that. Cleaning, I mean, it should be cleaning. I'll get to that in a minute about what happens in the place I live. It's totally horrendous how things are at the moment, but we'll get to that later on.
पूरा तब जाके तुम अपना कल्चर जाके प्रमोट कर रहे हो, वरना तुम ढोंग कर रहे हो यार, किसको
वो ढोंग कर रहे हो, बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हो। ये पता है, अब ऐसे ही जिस बंदे का आपने एग्जांपल दिया, ऐसे ही 50,000 बंदों को आप वीजा दे दो और बुला लो, ठीक है, जिनको टॉफी खा के, चिप्स खा के रैपर तक डस्टबिन में
Yeah, if
डालने
you
की आदत है,
call
वो क्या
all
करेगा
them
बाहर
type of
जाके?
people,
उसके हिसाब से तो यही नॉर्मल है
they're
ना।
just
उसको
gonna.
टूटी फूटी अंग्रेजी बोलनी आती है,
What
आती
he's
है,
trying
समझ
to
आ
say
जाता है
is
उसको क्या लिखा है,
that's
कहाँ पे
the
क्या साइन
norm
बोर्ड
to
लगा है, कहाँ
them.
पे क्या लिखा है, यहाँ पे लेटर नहीं करना। इस कंट्री में हर 10 कदम पे आपको डस्टबिन मिल जाएगा।
Yeah.
और पता होता भाई,
He's in Canada, he says. That's what he's saying. That there's not every 10 feet you're going to find a dustbin. It's the same here in the UK. It's not far off that way. You're not going to find anywhere to throw the rubbish. But you should see the back alleys in my area, because you've got the shops and restaurants, right, who've got their own bins, the commercial bins that they've got to throw the stuff away in. But what I've seen a lot of, which a lot of people don't mention, I'll be honest here, like, I don't know why people don't speak up. They just don't speak up. They're so afraid to speak or do anything about this. And I'm not saying go out there and start fights and do this. I'm against violence. But there's a civilized way of either educating, you know, anyone who doesn't understand that where is the rubbish meant to go, or the garbage, or whatever you want to call it, where it's meant to go. The point of education that needs to be done. And if education isn't possible, then they need to find some other solutions to see how we can get that message across. Because a lot of the time, what I've seen is happening, even in my area, is and you'll see a lot of there'll be quite a small percentage of people who are South Asian born here throwing rubbish into the back alleys, right? Because I'll say we've assimilated. We know the rules. Now, a lot of the people who are from Eastern Europe, who, like you said, may not know any English, they once they're living in properties where they're in numbers, right? Where you should be only one tenant living in there, maybe there's two, and maybe the landlord knows or doesn't know. I don't get involved in that. It's not my issue. That's the landlord's issue. They should be keep doing their job of knowing what's going on in their property, visiting it regularly, or however they want to do it, right? Or whatever the agency they've got, who manages that property. But what my point is that the any extra mattresses or if it's stuff that needs to be thrown away, I'll get my car or whatever vehicle and load the car up with whatever that rubbish is and go to the nearest recycling center, right? And put the timber, the plastic, the mattress or whatever in suitable place where it can be disposed of. But what you'll see the Eastern Europeans doing, is that they'll be on the corners, the rubbish. You go around to drop your kids off at the school, and there'll be mattresses, sofas around the corner, the back alleys, and that's where you get all the rats and all the other stuff, the pests that start gathering in the area, and that's where you get them issues then about hygiene as well, which causes an issue overall to that area, that district or whatever you want to call it. Is that's when the impact will be on a wider community. Now, as I said, it might just be an education thing. So I'm not targeting anyone. I'm just saying this is what's going on so that there's awareness of this, because people don't want to speak about this and raise awareness. And I wanted to speak about this after this video because they are saying basically that if there is something wrong going on, you should speak about it. Now, what I also wanted to say is I don't want this coming across that I'm racist or anything like that. This is just for awareness. What is going on? How are people? What stereotypes there are? Now this video is about being judged straight away from your ethnic group or however when you're out somewhere, and I'm not doing that with any of the Eastern European people who live in this country. They do work hard as well, from what I've seen. They'll do whichever job they can find. All I'm trying to clarify here is there might be a certain gap with communications or education where they don't know that that sort of rubbish is not meant to be placed there. There's recycling centers, maybe they're not aware of it. So, but until someone flags this, no one's going to. They won't know about it. It could also be that they don't have the certain resources to get to that place, like a vehicle maybe to get to that place. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not from that group, or shall we say from that society, so I can't speak on their behalf. But it would be nice to know maybe why is that happening. If there was anyone who wanted to comment and let me know why that happens. Is it more to do with money budget? They don't have transport, or is it just a case that they don't know that there are recycling centers? So these are points I'm raising here, and it would be. I've got I mean, there's different groups of cultures and ethnic groups that live in the area I live in. Some will take good care of their garden because they like gardening, and some people won't, right? That's their choice. It's their property. They do what they want. However, the thing is, some of the things that if they aren't kept, let's say, clean, clean is totally different from, let's say, doing your garden and stuff like that. Then there are a lot of pests that come into the area. So tall grass and loads of like rubbish around, plastic and things gathering up in corners and places is the number one spot where rats and other pests will, make it at home, and then that causes an issue for the wider community. That's the bit where there's a line about cleanliness and gardening and other things. I'm a big gardener, I like gardening, but what I'm trying to get at is there's a certain level of standard of where you want to maintain your property so that you're not attracting that sort of bad habitat of, pests, coming into that area. But yeah, that's about it. But the main thing is, I mean, what I'm trying to get out there is there are people in this country, right? If you see their gardens or their houses, some people take great pride and they want to clean their house all the time and do the garden, right? And that's got nothing to do with culture or ethnic group, and some won't. All I'm saying is, as I mentioned before, is there's a fine line between, having a place that is livable and is habitable, so that you're not being bothered by pests, because once they come in, they're hard to get rid of as well, and it can cause a lot of health problems, and that's only going to cause issues for your family or your own health. So that's why I wanted to bring that up.
बहुत सिंपल सी चीज है ये. नाउ नाउ आई अंडरस्टूड कि हमारे देश में सबसे ज्यादा मिसिंग क्या है, स्टेटस क्यू जिसको बोलते हैं. अगर मेरे आगे सार्थक चल रहा है, सार्थक ने चिप खा के डस्टबिन में फेंक दिया ना, तो कहीं ना कहीं सबकॉन्शियसली अगर मैं उसको देखूंगा ना, मेरा दिमाग भी वैसे ही चलेगा कि सार्थक ने यहाँ डाल दिया. हमारे यहाँ स्टेटस क्यू खराब है. हमारे आगे 10 जो लोग कर रहे हैं वो थूकते चल रहे हैं, कूड़ा गाड़ी से आगे फेंक देते हैं निकाल के, तो पीछे के 10 वाले भी.
He's right about that. I've been abroad in Pakistan, and when in the car, they'll spit out, what they call the pan or whatever. I've never tried it. Basically tobacco, whatever it is. But that's what he's saying, is that because there's 10 other people who are just throwing out the window, let's say, if you were going across the motorway. I've seen that happen here as well, by the way. But what's what he's saying, if you see 10 people doing that, the 11th person is like, oh, I'll do the same thing. But if someone in front of you is throwing it in the bin, maybe that will help the person behind you understand that, no, I need to throw in the bin as well. So you need to lead by example. That's what he's trying to basically tell us here. And I was trying to do that. I don't like throwing rubbish out in the road, because at the end of the day, if you're throwing a can outside on the road, or any tissue or plastic, where do you think it's going? Where do you think it's going? It's not going to just be uplifted, into the heavens, and then, that's it. The garbage is gone in space. No, it isn't. It's going to go down the street, into the sewage. It'll either block the sewage. If it doesn't go there, it gets blown onto the railway lines. I don't know if you've seen the railway lines. They are horrendous with rubbish around in the bushes. There's so much plastic and all this type of rubbish that's gathered there, because this is where it's all going from. Or over time, it'll go to the beaches and into the sea. And this is the wider issue worldwide with the pollution of seas and all this plastic, is because of this. So always be considerate, I would say. If you've got any rubbish in your car, anywhere you're walking along, keep it in your pocket, hold on to it. When you get to the next bin, put it in there. It does make a difference. You will lead by example. You might see 3, 4 other people doing that, but it doesn't mean you have to follow their steps and be the same. It's just that you don't have to be, I believe, educated even with that. It's just thinking about the overall picture of what that impact's going to be, as a wider community, as a wider society, or even the world.
करते हैं, और यही 10 वाले करते 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 ये सालों तक करते रहो आप, सेंचुरी तक, और हमारे जैसे, एंड देन इज व्हेन यू गेट एन इंडियन, द टिपिकल इंडियन दैट इज हेटेड ऑन द इंटरनेट.
आई फील भाई कि इट इज जस्ट सो सैड, क्योंकि पिछले सालों में हमने एक चीज का डंका बहुत पीटा है, संस्कृति, कल्चर, गोइंग बैक टू आवर रूट्स, और हम वो चीज जो बोलते हैं, हम खुद उसको अपने 10 मीटर में भी फॉलो नहीं करते. हम वो लोग हैं जो अपना खाना हाथ से खाते हैं, घर आओ तो चप्पल बाहर उतारो. दिस इज आवर कोर क्लीनलीनेस, अपनी बॉडी, अपना टेम्पल, वो वाले कल्चर से हम आते हैं और वो अपने घर में फॉलो करते हैं. लेकिन घर,
I mean, to some extent, it used to be the same with Pakistanis. Take your shoe off when you enter the house in the front, so your carpet's not getting dirty and other things. I don't know if a lot of people do that anymore. I was brought up that way. I don't know about the new generation, right? We'll see what happens. Um, but there were certain things that were beneficial. Cleaning your hands before you eat. After COVID happened, how much were people into when COVID happened? How much was it emphasized clean your hands, with soap, these many minutes and stuff like that? We were doing that well before COVID. Well before COVID, because of the religion as well, aspect of it, Islam, um, where the teachings are, you're meant to keep yourself clean. That was a big factor, when COVID happened. You know, because the cleaner you are, the less germs you're gonna carry around. It's just common sense. And scientifically, and in Islam, they were great scientists as well, about cleanliness and other things. I'm not going to go into one of the stories with the Ottomans and what happened there, but in how I was growing up, that's how I was growing up. Um, we do eat with our hands as well. Um, but your hands are clean if you've used soap, so why not? Um, Good for metabolism as well. I don't know if a lot of people know that when you eat with your hands. But there are times you're gonna have to use a spoon or fork. We're not that crazy. But what I'm saying is there are certain beneficial things that a lot of people were brought up about from their parents, and we might lose that as well. In our British Pakistani society because things change. That a lot of them, some of the beneficial things, unfortunately, won't go into the next generation. And then there'll be more more problems, I'll believe. And you see, this is not getting flagged beforehand. We're not proactive about it, and I'm a proactive person. I'm not a reactive person. I hate being a reactive person, because it's too late. It's too late when you're reacting to certain events, where you could have been proactive and stopped them events. That's how I feel. Um, and a lot of people might not be like that. That's fair. That's fair enough. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses, but that's what I'm saying. As a society as well, there are going to be a lot of issues that we're going to face in the future as well, because a lot of the certain things that there was core principles that kept families together. There was certain respect for the elderly, where you don't kind of speak in a bad, ill way against the elderly person, and then you take what they're saying, and if you want to take their advice, take it. But if you're not, 1 year and take it out the second year. That's what I was told, right? And rather than arguing with someone and fighting with someone who's older than you, so we were told to respect our elderly, which used to be the same in the British society here. But it's changed. What I see when I go out, and it's not just in our society as well, in the British Pakistani society, or um, ethnic groups, any ethnic groups, there's a lot of FUs going around. There's little kids, which I felt really sad about, because logically they're never going to think and have a proper conversation with someone without swearing. But what I've seen is every sentence has got a swear word. They're on the phones or on TikTok, um, joining as a co-host or whatever you want to call them, with another girl on there or someone who's young, and the language that's being used is demeaning, not respectful as all. So I feel like we're going backwards. It just doesn't make sense. And I hope there are more people out there who understand this, and it's not just me that feels this way. But when I've been out there, there's if you've got kids, right, who are my age, around, I mean, not my age, the kids I've got who are quite young at the moment, you're 6, 9, 10, you know, you try and hide them from these conversations that people have when you go shopping or anywhere, where they're just swearing constantly and saying these bad things, or they've got these bad behaviors. I don't want my kids to end up that way, you know, because a lot of these kind of behaviors do lead to kind of other issues in life, which is this video is not about, but it's important to talk about. It's just these things are important to talk about, but they aren't really mentioned a lot, you know. And I know this video I'm doing, this is one of the videos that I've done, which is the longest at the moment from what I can see. The runtime is at the moment, but I do want to kind of make sure, you know, I mention these points. And if anyone out there does want to do, you know, podcast with me, you know, as a guest and speak about these things and give me their picture, you know, I would really be great. You know, I would really appreciate it, seeing what the perspective is on the other side, and have that conversation as a civilized person, rather than, you know, fighting over little comments and just making little comments to each other to get back to them, which don't really have a solution to any issues that we're facing in society as a whole. It's not about even color here or group. It's just there are a lot of problems in today's society, because the attention span is really, really small with YouTube shorts and TikTok clips. They're just scrolling through, so the attention span is really, really tiny. And this is where the issue is, because if kids are using those sort of platforms, their attention span is really small, and they don't pay attention to the important things in life that they need to remember, and that is then not going to be there later on in their life, because they won't remember it because they didn't pay attention to it. It just went from one ear to another, and you know, it will be difficult. You won't see the result now, you see, because we don't. It's like an experiment, you know. When things happen, you don't know the result until you've carried out that experiment or time has lapsed. That is the same issue here. You won't know all these issues that we're going to have in society till later on, and then it's going to be too late. And there's not going to be a solution for those people who are then adults. And what you don't want is people just going into therapy, just like every other person going into therapy, because then it doesn't work that way. I believe, you know, there's got to be certain things that you need to be brought up with to help you become that person, and therapy's not going to help you with everything.
कि जस्ट बाहर सड़क पे सामने लैंप पोस्ट के नीचे कचरा पड़ा है, हमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता। और ये सारे ये 1.5 अरब की आबादी वाले देश है, ये सब लोग ऐसा सोच रहे हैं, एंड नो वन थिंक्स देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम इन इट। अरे भाई, आई एम सॉरी, आई डोंट रिलेट टू दिस कल्चर। मैं मतलब मैं वो
and we need people like you, and we need people like us who actively say this, that this is nothing to be related to. एक तरफ तुम संस्कृति की बात कर रहे हो, हम साइंस में कितने अच्छे थे, हम ये बेसिक तुम्हारे हाइजीन नहीं फॉलो हुए, ठीक है? तुम गाड़ी में खाना खा रहे हो, प्लेट प्याज से चटनी से भरी हुई है, तुमने वही फेंक दी बाहर की बार, और
कांच खुलेगा,
तुम्हारे मोबाइल पे क्या चल रहा है कि
मल्टीपल
डैमेज। हां, हमारे मतलब दारू वाला कल्चर देख लो। अब दिल्ली में पला बड़ा हूं, मैं तो सारी जिंदगी देखा है ये, दुकान के बाहर आपने दारू पी, सब कुछ, क्या एट द एंड अगर आपकी गाड़ी रात को निकल रही है ना वहां से, और वहां का फुटफॉल शाम शाम में 500-800 गाड़ी का है, कितना आता है बाय द एंड ऑफ दैट इवनिंग। और ये 4 से 5 घंटे की बात बता रहा हूं मैं आपको। किसी भी दिल्ली में कहीं भी जाओगे ना, तो जो पॉपुलर स्पेस है कि भैया यहां पे दारू पीने वाले आते हैं शाम को, वो खुलती है 6 से 7 बजे के बीच में, और रात को 1-2 बजे तक चलती है। 6 आवर्स में भाई, व्हेन यू लीव दैट प्लेस इज स्टिंकिंग। दैट प्लेस, दैट एंटायर प्लेस विल बी टर्न्ड इनटू अ फकिंग गार्बेज बिन, एंड पीपल ईट ओवर देयर, राइट? अब हर चीज, अब यही लोग, अब जिनके लिए नॉर्मल है, ये बाहर जाके क्या कर लेंगे? और गाड़ी के, अच्छा शीशे में वो फेंक दी, गाड़ी के अंदर रील चल रही है, हमारे पास अध्यात्म का इतना बड़ा ज्ञान था, हमारी संस्कृति इतनी रिच है, मैं ये शेयर कर देता हूं, और बाहर क्या कर रहा है, थूक रहा है, गुटखा थूक रहा है सड़कों पर।
ये जो
double standards he's talking about. He's saying they're watching a video on YouTube or TikTok about, you know, religion and other things, to say, oh, this is what we should be doing. I'm watching this, or let's say, for example, what he's saying is, I'm watching this video, which is telling me all the things that we should be doing in life, but on the other hand, you're throwing rubbish out the window. So how is that matching? That's what he's saying. How does that match? How does that work?
पता, इसमें तो खैर देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स इन्वॉल्वड, अगर उसमें चले जाएंगे तो पता, बट पिछले कुछ सालों में, और ये जो अचानक से टेक्सास में छठ पूजा मनाया जाने लगा ना, ये उसका एक परिणाम है कि हमें हमारी संस्कृति, हमारा कल्चर और सभ्यताओं का इतना घोल पिलाया गया है। सारी सब बातें ग्राउंड लेवल पे कुछ नहीं। क्या चार जितने भी ये जो अपने बायो में और धर्म और संस्कृति की बातें करते हैं और ये हिंदू और भारतीयता है ना बताते घूमते हैं, सालों ने एक किताब नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं कोई भी कि तुम
सबसे
जो
बड़ी
बोल रहे
कहानी
हो, हाँ घुसो भी तो तुम उसमें, तुम पढ़ो तो भी उसको, नहीं वो सब नहीं, बस
Yeah.
बोलना है। और क्या हमारा डंका बज रहा है
Not
बाहर
reading
विदेशों में
the
ये हो रहा है,
books
नहीं भाई
he's
तुम्हें हेट
saying,
मिल रही है, ये
but
हमें पता है क्योंकि हम थोड़े से ना थोड़े इंटरनेट सेवी लोग हैं।
saying things
अभी
and
भी
not acting
व्हाट्सएप पे तो
upon
यही
them.
प्रोपेगेंडा फैलाया जा रहा है कि हमारा तो विदेशों में डंका बज रहा है, और वही एंटाइटलमेंट लेके कि हम तो भाई अब विश्वगुरु हो गए, हमारा डंका बज रहा है, हमारी इज्जत बढ़ गई है बाहर, पहले कितनी थी ये नहीं पता, आज कितनी बढ़ गई है, तो वो कॉन्फिडेंस लेके बाहर जाते हैं, तब ये पताया में घूमते हैं झुंड बना के, अरे
अब आपको
इंडियन
पता
आए
है
जी।
हाँ, और ये फिर पिटते हैं, फिर आपकी लेडी बॉय से पिट रहे हैं भाई, और थोक में पिट रहे हैं, घूसे पड़ रहे हैं, नंगा कर रहे हैं, लोग मार रहे हैं भरी स्ट्रीट्स में नंगा कर रहे हैं। आपको पता है ये जो डायस्पोरा है ना, जो सबसे ज्यादा ये कह रहा है कि डंका बजता है हमारा, जिसके बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं कि संस्कृति हमारी, ये पता है कौन सा है सबसे ज्यादा, मैंने इसको जो नोटिस किया है वो है हमारे माँ बाप की उम्र वाले लोग,
हाँ।
एनीबडी 50+, ये जो जनरेशन है ना, ये जो ग्रुप ऑफ जनरेशन है ना, ये लीथल वेपन है हमारे देश में। इनकी सारी जो न्यूज आती है वो आती है व्हाट्सएप से, ठीक है, सारी की सारी। इनको कोई मतलब नहीं है कि हम खुद भी पढ़ के देख लें क्या एआई है क्या नहीं है। एआई इतना रिफाइन हो चुका है यार, आप और मैं
Is true. He's saying a lot of the older generation watches some of the news on WhatsApp and other things, and then they don't really look into if this is true or not. It could just be lies. Or AI, he's saying, is so refined now that they could just be telling them lies, but they won't know the difference.
पागल हो जाए, बेवकूफ बन जाए, तो हमारे माँ बाप तो क्या ही समझेंगे कि ये क्या नहीं है, ठीक है। अब इनको आता है कि भैया बाहर देखो ये डंका बज रहा है हमारा, अब पता नहीं कि उनको ये नहीं पता कि अगर एक ही वीडियो है तो 50 ऐसी वीडियो है जहाँ इंडियंस की पिटाई हो रही है या इंडियंस को गाली पड़ रही है फॉर बीइंग अनहाइजीनिक, बेसिक हाइजीन और सिविक सेंस। इनको इन चीजों से मतलब ही नहीं है, दे हैव नो क्लू अबाउट इट। ये अपने फोन में लगे रहते हैं भाई, ये बहुत ही खतरनाक है।
भ्रम में है, झूठ बोला गया है, झूठ प्रोपोगेट किया गया है, और वो झूठ जीते हैं वो लोग यार। मतलब एट अ पॉइंट यू कांट जस्ट बी एंग्री, यू हैव टू बी कंपैशनेट, एम्पैथाइज कि भाई तुम कितने भोले हो, तुम देश के बाहर गए भी नहीं और तुम्हें लग रहा है हमारे देश और देशवासियों की इज्जत बहुत बढ़ गई है। कैसे बताएं तुम्हें, जाके देखो एक बार। अब तो हर किसी की फ्लाइट स्पॉन्सर करके उसको वीजा देके जाके बोले, और इतने सारे लोग अगर रियलिटी देख के आ जाए ना, तो लोग कितने लोगों की होल लाइफ लाइव मोमेंट हो जाए।
भाई आप एक छोटी सी एग्जांपल सोचो ना, ये छोटा सा एग्जांपल सोचो, आज भी आप इंडिया गेट पे चले जाओ, बीइंग अ व्हाइट टूरिस्ट इज डॉन्टिंग, इज हॉन्टिंग इन इंडिया। और दिल्ली कैपिटल की बात कर रहा हूं मैं, आपने वो देखा है कि गोरी चल रही होगी, जाके
It is
पार्कोर करने लग जाता है,
risky.
बैकफ्लिप मारने लग जाएगा उनके सामने जाके,
Anyone
सीधा माइक लगा
born
देंगे मुंह पे, ठीक है, कुछ भी हिंदी में बोल
India,
देंगे उसके मुंह के
Pakistan,
ऊपर।
from a different country with a who's Caucasian, let's say, for example, it's risky, like, because the men there, if they're not educated and they're uncivilized, anything could go wrong. So they are advised not to go there, which makes sense.
पर उसको कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा, बाद में जाके उसे घर पे कोई इंडियन बताएगा उसको,
Or
बहुत
not to
साल
go
वो
alone.
कंट्री में रह रहा था, कि ये तो साले तेरे को ये बोल रहा है।
अरे बहुत मतलब एक इट्स
I'm gonna
यहाँ पे
skip
बात कर रहे हैं
some of
ऑफ
the
हाउ
video ahead.
इंडियन टूरिस्ट गोइंग अब्रॉड रिप्रेजेंटिंग अ कल्चर इन द ऑल एवरीथिंग प्रॉब्लमेटिक अबाउट इट। आप स्टैट्स देखो कितना टूरिज्म कम हो गया इंडिया में, इट इज ड्रास्टिक। वो नंबर फ्रेंचाइजी चलाते हैं उदयपुर में, समझना अनकंफर्टेबल करना, एक इमेज बन रही है इंडियन में ना, तो औरत वुमेन ट्रैवलर अलोन नो चांस। कितने देशों में तो एडवांस कम दिखते थे, अब और कम दिख रहे हैं। अब उनको जाके जो एक गोरा दिख रहा है इंडियन
एब्सोल्युटली,
हमारे सुधार की कैपेबिलिटी और कम हो जाएगी, है ना। और ऐसे लोग जिनको समझ में नहीं आता कैसे बिहेव करना है दूसरों के साथ। यहाँ पे तो लड़कियों को घूर लेते हैं, अपनी तो बेचारी लड़कियां भी अब उससे कस्टम हो गई, वो खुद नहीं निकलती 11 बजे के बाहर। वहां की लड़कियों को थोड़ी पता, वहां फिर वो हरकतें करते हैं, सब बर्बाद।
भाई एग्जांपल मैं देता हूं ना आपको, आप जैसे आप कह रहे हो कि यहाँ की
He's
लड़कियां,
right about that, like, because a lot of the people I saw who were students coming over from abroad, they used to like really stare at the girls, when I was in university, and these were Asian girls who were staring at, who were British born, and they would feel really uncomfortable when I would speak to them, and they would, say, "Oh, we don't want to be friends with freshies." They used to call them freshies who used to come from abroad as students, and I can understand because on their mindset, they were either thinking about, I'll get a visa if I can manipulate, or let's say get this girl, this British Pakistani or Indian girl to fall in love with me, just for the visa, and then they might not even stay with them. So yeah, I can understand from that point of view. And they didn't feel safe because, a lot of them, sometimes they could be stalkers because they've watched a lot of Bollywood movies and think that the Bollywood movies are how romance is, or how you approach a girl, which is not correct. Or some don't even know how to do it. But I did get that a lot of the feeling, or that them conversations with friends who I was with, who would tell me that, that person staring at me, you're following me everywhere where I go. So it's not just Caucasian woman. It's British. It could be British, Pakistani, Indian woman, any ethnic group who can feel the same way. And I think it's because where they've been brought up in, that's the norm there, and that's I don't know what the solution is to it. This is why these guys are speaking about, that this is how the image is when you go abroad, because that's the image that's left behind of when certain things like that happen, and it puts the whole population under that microscope because of that reason.
कस्टमर वही है एक कोई कंटेंट क्रिएटर थी कनाडा में आई डोंट रिमेंबर हर नेम 3-4 महीने पहले मैंने उसकी रील देखी तो उसने ये बोला कि पहले मैं यहाँ थी मैं घर से निकलती थी तो कैट कॉल होती थी एंड आई फेल्ट
वाग आई थिंक सेशल्स में थी कि मैं यहाँ पे हूँ
अच्छा
तो जा क्यों रह रही है यहाँ पे उसको आर वर्ड बोल रहे हैं ये वो मैंने कहा
Yeah, the
एग्जैक्टली
comments.
दिस मेंटालिटी
यही यही एग्जैक्टली देख रहे हो और ये घटना भाग गए भी नहीं होंगे इनके पास पासपोर्ट भी नहीं होंगे
If some people say
इनके पास पासपोर्ट भी नहीं होंगे ये बाहर मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ ना ये जो बाहर के लोग जो बाहर जैसे मैं रह रहा
how
हूँ
they
10 साल हो गए
feel,
मेरे को यहाँ नहीं
then the
ठीक है मैं रह
comments
रहा हूँ कोई
from
और
the
बाहर रह रहा है
people
ये
who
आपको
live in
क्लियर
India
पिक्चर
or
बताएगा कि हो क्या रहा है
Pakistan
बाहर
are really
लेकिन जो ये हेट जनरेट
disturbing,
होती है ना हमारी
and they
कंट्री में
get a
लोग
lot of
उनके लिए
hate
एनआरआईज और ये
saying,
बता
oh
रहे हैं
well,
कि भैया बाहर
why
ये
you
बेटर है
said that,
ठीक है पैसेंजर परमवीर करके
we
एक बंदा
don't
है
do
बहुत
that,
बढ़िया
we
हाँ,
don't
yeah,
stare at
एक
you and
एक
stuff
मोहित
like
मोहित
that,
भाई भी हैं वो भी बहुत अच्छा वो
or
बनाते
why
हैं
you wearing them clothes.
उनकी मूछें हैं
मुझे
बहुत राइट अगर तेरे पास 10-20 बकरा है जो मैं बाहर जाके दिखा
What I'll do, we might catch up with the other part of the video. I mean, we've only went through 36 minutes, and I didn't think that it would take that long. When I was watching it, I maybe got carried away when I was watching and didn't realize the 2 hours were up. I think I split it up between maybe watching it yesterday throughout the day and not watch 2 hours consistently. So we will catch up with where we were 36 minutes. So we'll do another one, from this point, another episode to carry on because it's quite long, isn't it? What they're speaking about. What I did want to mention from personal experience here today is, and this is important, and this should something that you hopefully people can reflect on is, uh, you know, I'm very educated, logically speaking, I'll think things through and the steps of what I'm doing and what the outcome will be, like what I'm saying, what the action is, and what the outcome of that action would be. Is it worth for me to, let's say, do like say them things or do them things, and then will the outcome be achievable or something that's gonna be worth it, and there are certain things in life where something can happen, like someone could hit your car, someone maybe might say something to you, and in that moment you get hot and angry and you do something which is not normal and you regret on later on. So usually my thought process is, if someone is being offensive to me, and I'm giving it from my experience, or has done something that has hurt me or emotionally or caused any kind of sense of, I don't know, unhappiness, I always think through my head first before reacting. If I do this against this person or say something against this person, what's the outcome going to be? Is it going to change anything? Is it going to make things better for me? Will it escalate, for example? And will the escalation just cause more harm? Now, there are certain things, of course, I'm mentioning. If there are certain things happening in your life, they should be reported, to the police and other certain things if things are that bad. What I'm saying is there'll be sometimes in life where there are little comments that you get, or someone says something, and just unfortunately we've had to make it as a norm from when I've been little. There's been so much racism that you ignore it now at this point because it's not going to change. There's a lot of talking points, that we should be doing something to change it. But there are things that you can't. With you saying something's not going to change their mentality or their thought process because of how much the media maybe has put spotlight on certain situations, that it's hard to now change what their mindset is unless they speak to you in a civilized way and they are ready to understand and reflect on it. What I mean by this is, for example, when the Twin Towers, right, were hit, for example, I'll give you one example there. I was a big target in school. This was secondary school. Within a week, someone it was Caucasian, targeted me, tripped me over in the hallway of the school. I hit the wall and then hit the floor in an odd, awkward way and fractured my femur, which is below the hip. And I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up. I think I was 13 at the time, so like, what does a 13-year-old at that time, if you think about it, know about, why you're being targeted and certain things like that? You're still a teen, you're just starting as being a teenager. And, that was my first experience of having someone targeting me because of my religion or color. And I had a blood clot. If they didn't operate on time, I would have died. That's how bad it was. And then they put screws in, which changed my life forever. And then you have to be careful, how you're walking, or any fall in the future is gonna be fatal, or anything can happen. But this is the thing, that certain things can happen elsewhere in the world, but you're being targeted even though you've not done anything. As a 13-year-old, how would I have any involvement in that? I was in school every day, but you're being targeted because of what's happened somewhere else in the world, and that is not right. Similar situation now with, we see this every 10 something years, that has to be some scapegoat or people being targeted to blame things on in society or in a country or in a continent or around the world. That's how it is at the moment. And the point I was going to get to as well is, now I've got a young family, right? And if whenever I go into a store, even if I didn't have a young family, right? Whenever you go into a store and you walk in, you're already being stereotyped, even before you've opened your mouth or done anything, based on how you look, and them assuming maybe what religion and country you're from. You could be educated and have a PhD, or be some celebrity. It doesn't matter. You're classed as that person from that group of people because of your color or religion. That's how I think bad it is. That the stereotype side of things. And people who've not been in them shoes can't relate to this, unfortunately. You won't understand the pressure and the feelings that we have when we're trying to go about our normal life. We always feel like we're being targeted subconsciously. Like I said, as an example, is you could walk into a shop, you're doing some shopping, and sometimes if you've had to walk past someone, or you're in the way of someone and they've had to go past you, you feel like that you can see it in their eyes, kind of thing, that at some point, if it came to you and him or that person, worst situation, they are going to be targeting you because of your color or race. Or they might have something that they wanted to say but they can't say because obviously social constraints about not being racist. But if it was open, they would most likely be telling you how they feel about you being in that shop. And that's always what I always feel anxious about, is that you're out somewhere and you're being looked at, because you're that different person there. There might be 5 or 6 of Asian people in there. I'm not saying it's just me, as in like one person in that position, in that place, in that store, or wherever you want to call it, in a park. But you do feel like the eyes are on you constantly, and any wrong move is going to cause them to abrupt and start saying things which they feel, and they just need that opportunity. This is where I'll try as best as possible to not cause anything that's going to get my attention when I'm outside shopping anywhere. I'll do my shopping as fast as I can, get the things I need, calmly as possible, of course, and then just go home. Or if I do need to go anywhere, I will go. But I don't think people understand how we feel as a society when we go out, how that when we're driving or anything, that, you know, I follow the road rules as best as I can, I'll be honest, where a lot of people I will say are speeding from my culture or any other culture. I've seen it all, going through red lights and everything. And I'll be honest, you can make a mistake. Anyone can as a human being, right? We're not perfect. But you can't judge someone based on, your color, your religion, or whatever if they are driving. But sometimes if you're driving the speed that's on the actual road sign, you'll see someone who goes past you and says, go back to your country, you don't know how to drive. And I'm like, well, the speed's 50. You're doing 60. How is that? How does that give you the opportunity to tell me to go back to my country? I'm following the rules that are created in this country, for the UK motorways or whatever, right? I'm following the rules as per what the road sign says and following that speed, but you're the one who wants to get past me because you're in a hurry. So you're not following the rules, but you're blaming me, because of what? Because of my color. These are the things. We have to face these things, unfortunately. And people will say, "Oh well, you shouldn't be living like that. That should not be the norm." But what do we do? What do we do? Like, we can't argue back and fight back. It just puts us in a worse position. If I was to confront someone who made a little comment about me being, oh he's them type of people do that. I'm not gonna react to it. There's no point of it. The amount of times I've heard certain things, I've stopped listening, to be honest, and ignoring it, because me going out and reacting to that isn't gonna change their mindset. It isn't. They'll just think, see, I was right. He's confronting me now, and then there'll be a bigger issue, and then it'll just be more widespread, and there'll be more people gathering, and you'll be the center point of of being the target then, and you being blamed. And I'll give a prime example. A few years back, when it was it Curry's, and they had the car phone warehouse, was it, inside the store, right, as one of the hubs. I had ordered one of the phones, which was a Samsung. I pre-ordered it, right, and I went into the store at the time they told me in the day to go and collect my pre-order, right, for that new phone. And it's not me, basically, but when I went in there, it's a click and collect service, right? So they've got a certain standard that they had to meet. The guy who had to serve me told me that because it's a click and collect, I have to serve this customer first, right? But before I got there, he was speaking to someone else, who was an old gentleman, right? Maybe a pensioner or something, and he said to him, I have to serve him because according to the click and collect, there's a certain time frame we have to meet to hand over what they've come to collect. Otherwise, I don't know, it must be something to do with their policy or how they're reviewed or whatever happens in the background. That's got nothing to do with me. And I was just waiting there for him to finish with the gentleman anyways. So I didn't push in. I just went in and when he asked me, I said, I'm here for a click and collect. And he told the customer, I have to serve this gentleman first. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, that's fine. He's went to get the stuff, the phone, and he starts saying to me, oh, in this country, you wait in a queue. And in my time, oh, we did this and that. And I was like, why are you being so racist? I mean, I didn't say that, but I said to him, what's that got to do with my colour or ethnic group? I was waiting in a queue. The staff member has asked you if he can serve me first because of the certain rules they have to follow about the click and collect. I'm not pushing in. I haven't asked him to serve me first. I'm more than happy to wait, but he has to do that according to whatever policy they follow. So I'm not enforcing anything here. But this guy was like really ramped up about it in my face about this country and how the rules should be followed about queues and all this type of stuff. And I shouldn't be having to kind of listen to that type of thing. It's like I've done nothing wrong. But this is the mentality. This is the mentality, straight away. The first thing that they'll say about is about your color and you not knowing how to live in this country when I perfectly know well enough how to live here. And I was following the rules as what the store was telling me to do, you know. And then instead of the staff in the store actually asking the customer to not behave like that, they said to me to leave the store, like as in it's my fault that I'm Asian or I'm brown or whatever the situation might have been. I haven't caused any violence. I've not caused any arguments, but someone else has confronted me and caused all of this. I'm the one who's let's say, the recipient taking all this stuff, but I got the blame because I was a different color. This is the mentality. And this is Curry's or PC World. This is why I don't shop there anymore. I never went back in that store. Left them a review, even logged a complaint, but they were like, "Oh, we need proof." I mean, I wasn't going to get a video out at the same time when that happened. I didn't know he was going to confront me like that. I'd finished work and went to get a phone. That's all it was, a normal day to me. But these are the things. These are the things that you have to face, which people don't realize on the other side. They haven't lived a day in our shoes to see what it feels like. If they did, they would understand what it's like. But I wanted to share one of his experiences because of this video, what they've been talking about, because I totally understand where they're coming from. I'm born and bred here, but still have to face these issues. And the organization, which, like Curry's, like I said, when I complained to them, they didn't do anything about it. They just wanted to wash their hands off it. Like, oh, it happened so long ago, because I didn't bring it up for a while. I just kept quiet about it. And then they were like, oh, it's been such a long time, we can't do anything. This and that, this normal legal or HR jargon, whatever it was, PR jargon that used on the emails. So I was quite disappointed, this was before, like, things like Black Lives Matter and of things like that happened, which then brought up organizations or companies to do more against racism. But this was before that. So these things do happen, just to mention, in someone's normal life. And it's just unfortunate, not everyone is like that. I've got friends who are really respectful. They don't see me as someone who's, a British Pakistani with a different color. They appreciate me, for my strengths, and then obviously any weaknesses I've got. They're not like going to be targeting me, anything. They're really nice friends. So to be honest, not everyone is like that, but we are labeled as one in a group, and that's where kind of it can be kind of disturbing, and sometimes it can destroy life as well. Like, like I said, with my own experiences, it can ruin your life, and impact you for your whole life. And you don't want that then for your kids, because of what you've experienced. You do always want better for your kids, and that's what my biggest concern is. And this is why this video hit me, and I wanted to make this video about the situation that we're in. And there's a lot of protests that have been going on as well. Everyone's got a right to protest, but it's the mindset, of thinking a certain way about a group of people which you don't understand, who are just another human being. They're not causing any negative detriment to the community as a whole, and there's a lot of positives, but there are cons as well. But that is true in every society. It's not about color, religion. Things happen in every society and community, and you have to work together to resolve them. But that's what I wanted to leave this video with. Hopefully, you've enjoyed my insight into all of this. I just wanted to talk more and give my insight and show, that I do have a mindset where, where it's proactive. I've been educated. I can't speak about these things. But yeah, it was great covering this. There are more important points these guys bring up, but the video is so long that we might have to do it in another episode. And I hope from this video a lot of people understand what I'm talking about. Anyone who can relate to this will understand, of course, what I've said, and hopefully helps other people as well understand how it can be, for someone who is a different ethnic group or color to be going out in the shops or anywhere, and how they might feel. So it might help with the understanding or anything that can help. But as I said, I would be always happy to, share commentary or do a podcast with someone who wants to have this conversation. It doesn't have to be about this. It could be about anything in society, and I would be more than willing to do it. That's the only way you learn. I like to learn. If maybe my perspective is wrong, I would like to debate about it, listen to what the other side is, and just, kind of have a civilized conversation. That's all it is. But if you have enjoyed it, please subscribe. I'm on TikTok as well. Been doing Steven Seagal reactions because I've always wanted to kind of do funny things and not be on the serious side, about these conversations. But I wanted to kind of get my point out here and have this conversation. And I hope we can do more videos of certain elements in life and other things that happen, or anything, So yeah, I am on TikTok. I'm on Instagram as well. But do subscribe on YouTube as well. It will help me a lot. And I appreciate anyone who has watched this full video of me talking today. And please leave any comments and any thoughts you've got. I'm more than happy to have a look at any feedback and see what we can speak about in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.